A basic model of communication has 4 elements. At its most elementary, the model implies a linear process. A communicator creates a message and sends it through a medium to a receiver. Imagine seeing a political advertisement for tax cuts on television or YouTube. The politician is the communicator, the television is the medium through which the images we see and words we hear travel, and the viewer is the receiver. The virtue of the CMR model is its simplicity, but that simplicity is also its weakness. Critics call it the magic bullet or hypodermic needle model, as if the media simply inject meaning straight into the brains of receivers. But meaning isn't something you receive, it's something you play a part in creating. A communicator can intend for their message to mean whatever they like, but not all receivers will just agree with them. There are many receivers, and they don't all think alike. The problem with a linear CMR model is that it can't account for the social nature of meaning making. In the 1970s, the cultural studies scholar Stuart Hall made a crucial intervention. In his famous encoding-decoding model, the construction of meaning takes place during both the encoding of a message by the communicator and the decoding of that message by its recipients or audience. In a mass society, audiences are made up of many individuals with different lived experiences of the world and different priorities and values. They bring all this to bear on how they decode the messages they receive. Nevertheless, we live in societies where certain meanings are widely shared and agreed upon, so cultural texts often have preferred meanings. The encoding-decoding model proposes 3 positions from which audiences decode the meaning encoded in a cultural text: the dominant or preferred position, a negotiated position, and an oppositional one. Think of them like this. The dominant hegemonic or preferred position is where the encoder and decoder are in complete agreement. The negotiated position is where the decoder broadly agrees with the encoder, but might make some adaptations. The oppositional position is where the decoder understands the encoder but disagrees entirely. Say an election advertisement you see on television or social media promises that large tax cuts will lead to economic growth and shared prosperity. For this promise to make sense and be politically effective, almost everyone has to understand the message and recognise its fundamental meaning. This is the dominant or preferred reading. The politician wants you to agree with them. In the case of an advertisement for tax cuts, the dominant meaning is that the government taxes are a bad thing because they restrict economic growth. The advertisement takes these meanings for granted, and the audience of the advertisement would implicitly recognise them as dominant social principles. But texts rarely elicit a purely dominant or preferred reading. The most common response to a text is to take a negotiated reading position. A negotiated reading is one where a viewer sees the tax cut ad campaign and agrees that tax cuts lead to economic growth, but disagrees with the policy being advertised because it doesn't directly benefit them. An oppositional reading of the advertisement would understand but refute the politician's claim that tax cuts are good altogether. Imagine a viewer who sees the ad and immediately yells at the television that economic growth is bad because it strangles the planet or only benefits the rich. The encoding-decoding model helps us to think about the relationship between the social process of representation and the exercise of power. A powerful group might have the capacity to encode meanings and distribute those meanings to large groups of decoders, but they face constraints. While meanings are not predetermined, encoders work within a social system dominated by already agreed upon, preferred ideas. This narrows the range of things that can be said. And encoders can't control the decoding process. It's always possible that decoders will reject the preferred or dominant meanings. So, to some degree, power is distributed among encoders and decoders. Groups with power seek to keep the moments of encoding and decoding in sync, to generate consent and agreement. Groups seeking power aim to disrupt this process, creating oppositional decoding, and make their own texts that encode alternative meanings. By thinking in terms of encoding and decoding, and by looking for examples of preferred, negotiated and oppositional readings, we can start to identify which groups are trying to maintain consensus and which groups are trying to disrupt it. Exercising power involves paying attention to both the moments of encoding and decoding and the relationship between them.